Thanks, guys. My name's TJ, and I'm about to slam and jam on cam with Rojom.
Yo, I like that. He's not a rapper even. So, we're about to go into our second semifinal, TJ. It's starting to come down to the wire. Remember, people tuning in, we only have one spot to give away in the Asia-Pacific region, and we have 3 people remaining. The second semifinal will determine who is going to play up against Chonsu. Taking a look at these lineups, Tansoku and Rojom have chosen to both ban Druid. Now, that's a ban that I can get behind because, TJ, we've been seeing a lot of Druid, and honestly, I'm a little over it right now, in the sense that I like Malygos Druid. It's really fun to play. I think it's fun to learn for sure, but it definitely has been very strong in recent times, and I don't think this is a bad choice at all.
Yeah, it's been stealing some wins lately in both last call invitationals, and one thing about Druid is that it's very flexible. And one thing that players who enjoy hitting the face hate is things that are flexible, because it means that their game plan gets interrupted by things that they're not expecting. Yep. And that's exactly what Druid does. Yes. So both these players, with their aggressive game plans, want to sort of get out that Z-axis, so to speak, of this series.
It's very interesting that both these guys are the ones bringing aggressive lineups, and they happen to hit each other. And you're talking about, some of these decks like Druid, which are so good at adapting to people's game plans. That's part of the reason why Druid's still really strong, because cards like Swipe are so robust in how they deal damage or clear the board. And you look at the lineups too, both bring aggro Shaman, both have these tempo mages. There a lot of different take. For example, we saw the Leroy Jenkins in Rojom's list, which is very unusual to see in that kind of mage list. So I want to see how the clash of styles go up against each other and who's going to come out on top.
Yeah,
it'd be cool. It's cool to see also a Japanese player once again go to BlizzCon. We've had a Japanese player last year go really far, and then not really able to follow up on this year would be a travesty, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm going to show some footage from their previous matches earlier on today, but sort of going on that point a little bit more as well. A Korean player has won every single Hearthstone Championship Tour event for Asia Pacific so far this year, with Handsome Guy winning 2, and of course with Diane winning in winter. So there's a chance that we see an all-Korean final, which would guarantee another Korean player winning a major event, and that means another Korean player going to the World Championship at BlizzCon. If Handsome Guy could have gone twice, he would have.
He gets 2 lives at BlizzCon. Of course, Yulsik, second place finisher of the Summer Championship, will go, guaranteeing a non-Korean from Asia Pacific. But I have to imagine that a lot of other regions feel a little crushed right now, especially Taiwan. They've had 2 horses in the running. Tom and Shasi now both are eliminated. And as a result, they're no longer going to be able to be represented in 2016 Hearthstone World Championship. That's pretty disappointing because, I was hoping that Tom would be able to make a repeat performance and appearance. He did come to 2014 along with Frozen Ice back in the day. Also because, Tom's my brother from another mother. He's my doppelganger.
He's going to have purple hair the next time we see him.
Hopefully. I actually was kind of disappointed that Tom showed up on camera today with just normal hair, not anything dyed, to compliment me. I would love a contrast one to purple.
Yeah. He was too busy prepping, though. Got to prep those decks that are going to get beat down by aggro.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of players have fallen today with more greedier lists. Saddle talked about it on broadcast earlier. You look on paper, individually, the players with those greedier lists, you'd say, oh, these decks are favored on paper. They seem like really refined. If you look at the past Summer Championship as well as the last call Invitational, you'd see that the meta sort of favored those decks. But this time around in the Asia Pacific last call, these players are bringing stuff that you may not expect. These 2 players especially, 2 of the players in the tournament with aggressively themed warrior decks, Pirate Warrior for Rojom and the Dragon Warrior. It's more of aggressive Dragon Warrior too, I feel. It runs Malkorok and Arcanite Reaper. So interesting to say the least. But we're in game number 1.
Yep. Thanks for being patient, everybody. We were just trying to get all of the accounts synced and making sure that we can get our first game underway. And the path continues to find who will be the 4th person from Asia Pacific to join us. going to start things off with Zoo versus the Shaman. Now, I know that people thought that Zoo and Shaman have been going back and forth, but since the patch, it feels really interesting to think about the impact that Maelstrom Portal, but also the patch has had on this matchup. What do you think, TJ? Do you think the nerfs to cards like Abusive Sergeant and Rockbiter and Tuskar Totemic are too much for the Aggro Shaman to fight back against Zoo?
I don't think so. Aggro Shaman's been pretty good for a long time. You know, even before it got additional tools. You know, even before it got Maelstrom Portal. Even before it got, you know, Spear Claws if you run it. One of the aggressive Shamans does run it. And even to go back to the mech days, Aggro Shaman still existed, even though it wasn't as powerful. So even with the change to the cards, I still feel like it's there. I was talking about this earlier with some people backstage. Shaman has like 36 good cards. You mean most of the mid-range Shaman decks run like 26 Shaman cards and 4 neutrals. You know, sometimes it's a little bit different than that, but aggressive Shaman does have still a lot of tools. Even with the Rockbiter change, Doomhammer Rockbiter is still a thing. Even though a lot of these players have tended not to run it, Doomhammer is still a thing by itself. It's still going to deal a lot of damage. And they still have all that burn that they can throw at your face. Now they just have additional tools to compound on that, like Maelstrom Portal and the Spear Claw. So I think it's going to be around for a while. Well, until some cards rotate out. It's going to be around for another couple months.
Sure, that makes sense, at least until we see the next expansion. Taking a look at these deck lists a little bit clearer, you can start seeing the differences already. Ancestral Knowledge and Overload card, Blood Mage Thanos, these are a little unconventional given the aggressive list, but keep in mind it is aggressive. You know, he tops out at Doomhammer. He puts in those Flame Wreath Facelesses. Instead, he's incorporated some of those empty slots of Rockbiter and the Tuskar Totemic to have some Overload synergy with things like Tunnel Trog. Now, he chooses to coin the Feral Spirits because it introduces the most logistical problem. Any minion that Tansoku plays, he can also use Lightning Bolt on it the following turn.
But Tansoku has a lot of 1-drops.
Yeah, it's almost perfect.
Yeah, it's really going to help him out. He does have Defender Vargas too, sort of what you want. You want to sort of flood the board with minions early on, and Defender Vargas can ruin Aggro Shaman's day, but Rojom has some, at least some answers. You know, he can kill off the Abusive Sergeant, he can Lightning Bolt down the Flame Imp, he can, you know, try and get himself back in the game. He can take solace in the fact that Tansoku has damaged himself quite effectively.
Yeah.
With the Flame Imps early on, which means that that's less work that Rojom has to do later on.
Yeah, I mean, Flame Imp essentially just puts a free Sinister Strike in your opponent's hand, just to deal damage to yourself. Even though it's a very powerful minion to play on the first early game mana, first few turns in the game, Flame Imp does end up becoming a huge liability as the game develops and you're not able to win early on. The aggressive Shaman has all these ways to burn you down. I mean, Lava Burst is one of those things. One of the also interesting things to call out is the fact that Elemental Destruction is in this deck list. And that's also a very interesting thing, too. But I think Rojom wants to play the Maelstrom Portal next turn with the Blood Mage Thanos.
It's kind of greedy, though.
It's very greedy.
Because Defender Vargas
punished.
Definitely can punish. You know,
Super punished.
Maybe an attack onto the Flame Imp would have been maybe a little bit more sensible.
Mega punished.
He got very greedy, and Tansoku was like...
Giga punished.
He just swirled his fist around.
I'm just increasing in size and scope.
Swirled his fist around, did a backflip, and then said, Giga punish.
Terror punished. We're going to keep going up until, I mean, pretty much any way for Shaman to answer this. Zeus is going to snowball the board. But yeah, one thing I also want to point out too is the Elemental Destruction. Elemental Destruction, a card that can be really impactful in this matchup for Shaman too, to clear the board. Once you've acquired enough burn, you can just stop playing for board and you can try to just burn your opponent down. Zoo will also be in a position where they don't want to life tap, even though that's their primary engine. So if you can get to that spot, the Shaman will be feeling good. But until then, cards like Doomguard and 9 damage on the board is a significant pressure.
Ooh. So Arch Squire drawn is not really going to contest this board very much, and he's under some heat, man.
Yeah, I think he might consider Lava Bursting the Doomguard just to stop taking damage this turn. I don't really like any other play. Any development to the board is extremely weak. I guess you could try to absorb the damage, because in the end, when your opponent played Doomguard and has an empty hand, you're not nearly as afraid as dying from the hand. So if you play Argent Squire, you're sort of, you know, playing it slow, so that way things like Maelstrom Portal can have a higher impact. But that's really optimistic. And if your opponent has 9 power on the board and you're working at 19, you realistically could just be looking at 2 more turns until death.
Yeah. Also, if he plays Argent Squire, he'd have an opportunity to totem up. And even though totem up seems really bad in this situation, there's 3 totems that are pretty good. Searing Totem contests the board. Spell Power Totem sort of has a taunt on it because of the fact that Tansoku knows there's a lot of things that benefit from Spell Power, including Maelstrom Portal, which he might have been able to guess was in the hand from earlier on. Taunt Totem is just a way to block damage, so there's Searing Totem. And he's going to go with that play and going to try and get a good Maelstrom Portal next turn. He's going to have his full mana crystals available to him.
He's played greedy already to this point, and now he's going to continue to go for the greed, but cards like Imp Gang Boss are a direct punish for that. Not to mention that Rojom still might not have an answer to clear the board, even if Imp Gang Boss wasn't there, because of things like the taunt on the Possessed Villager complicating the trades.
I wonder.
So Tansoku, Imp Gang Boss, goes on the far right. I guess he's trying to figure out placements in case he drew Direwolf Alpha, because both defenders were used. Oh, okay. Guess he decides to take that easy trade instead of pushing the damage. Perfectly fine.
Yeah, this is going to be tough. Even if Rojom were to roll Spell Power Totem, it would make Maelstrom Portal with Blood Mage Downus up to 3 damage.
Yeah,
but
not
it wouldn't
enough.
kill the Doomguard, and it wouldn't kill the Imp Gang Boss.
Perhaps. Okay, so he didn't Lava Burst last turn. If he does it this turn, any Maelstrom Portals, oh man, it's just so ugly at that point. You're barely cleaning up what's going on here, and the Imp Gang Boss is creating more minions. I guess you could play Sir Finley with that as well, and you could start off with Finley to see where you land on. And at this point, you might even consider playing the Finley and taking a defensive hero power like Priest, because of just how much threatening it is to your status of the game.
Ooh. Gets a Malchezaar Zip. No discard effects, but there's just an above average health on a minion, so he's dead to 4 damage. But that's about as good of a turn as you can hope for, I'd imagine. He's going to be overloaded a bit next turn.
There it is.
Oh, never
4
mind.
damage, and the greed from Rojom does not pay off. I know a lot of people will look at, wow, he taps into Soulfire. That ended up being the winning card. Is Tansoku pretty lucky?
About to jump into game number 2 of the second semifinal series of the evening / morning. And it's a good one. Tansoku and Rojom are both interesting players, both with aggressive decks, unique choices, and that's what I like to see in Hearthstone. There's a couple people battling out wet noodle fights.
In the evening / morning / afternoon, really. I mean, it's afternoon somewhere in the world.
It is.
I believe that is the quote.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere. I think that's the quote.
Yeah. There used to be a commercial that always would play something and always say do you know where your children are? It's at 10 p.m. because it's late night. And that's what it is. It's late night Hearthstone in America. It might be some early morning shenanigans for those who are other time zones, but whether you are huddling over by the Andes Mountains or chilling with us here, thank you so much for everyone who's tuned in. We've been having a lot of fun hanging out. I was going to game number 2, Mage versus the Shaman. I was going to go for a global tour, but I noticed the game started. I was going to say, from the Andes to the Himalayas to...
I was actually going to say...
I was going to go to the Bermuda Triangle, just keep pointing at different geographical locations, but then the game started.
Out of all of the regions that you could have chosen in the world, it's the Andes Mountains. They get a special shout out today.
I was going to land in somewhere in Asia, to Mesopotamia, and then head over to the islands of Maui or whatever. And then eventually be thank you so much for joining us. However, the game has started, and now the turn ones are already developed here. We have both of these players playing their 1/3 1-mana minions. Now, Rojom already introduced with an interesting choice of how he wants to deal with this Tunnel Trog. Chooses to Arcane Missiles, and I guess that's the optimal way of what happened outside of just straight up hitting it 3 times. So that's the second best scenario, hitting it 1 time. The worst case scenario would actually be hitting it twice.
Yes. Well, Tansoku has coin Argent Horse Rider with this Mana Worm. You know, Totem Golem was the play that emerged stuck out to me. Because, you know, it fits the mana use a little better. You can hold out the coin, Argent Horse Rider next turn. But Mana Worm is very dangerous in this deck. You know, it's one of those tools that can allow the Tempo Mage to sort of beat you in a race. And Totem Golem would have been contested easily. You would have been sort of leaving it up to your opponent. And I believe Rojom kept quite a few cards. That also leads Tansoku to believe that Rojom has an early hand that he wants against Shaman. Which means that he wants to try and be proactive on the board and not let Rojom use those cards in a proactive way.
Do you call it Totem Golem?
Totem Golem?
Oh, Totem Golem. Okay, thank goodness. I thought you've been hanging out with Raven too much. Just, mispronouncing names and stuff.
Yeah, whew. Totem Golem.
Yeah,
Shaman.
Totem Golem. It's because it rhymes. It's supposed to be funny. Just like Fierce Monkey in German, which is Affe mit Waffe. It means monkey with weapon or something like that.
Wow.
But because it rhymes, it's funny.
That's quite literal.
Yeah. I mean, that's just kind of what the German language tends to be.
I think the English language should take a feather out of the cap of... Nope. Okay, well, the German language. But we got to change that saying. Instead of feather the cap, let's say they should take strict advice from the German language.
They should take their monkeys with weapons in a hat, right?
Yes, exactly.
So the saying goes, alas, Rojom is fighting for board control. There's no fierce monkeys this game. He gets the Mana Worm Arcane Blast combo, and that's going to get an efficient move on the Totem Golem. And now Tansoku is going to draw the Feral Spirits. Nothing really else to do except fight for early game board control. The problem with overloading is that he's limited to just playing the Lava Burst and Lava Shock. He can't play his Doomhammer, and normally developing the Doomhammer on 5 is really important to seizing the board and the momentum against other fellow aggressive decks.
Yeah, that's very true. And he's going to take a lot of damage because of this. Rojom has a chance to clear off both Feral Spirits without having to damage his minions here. With Frostbolt on 1 and then an Arcane Missiles. Only 2 missiles have to hit out of the 4 he gets because of the spell power on the Cold Sorcerer. So, is he going to take the... Okay. Well, I mean, I guess 1 damage would is a lot of times... or 1 health is enough to survive Shaman since they don't have the 1 damage hero power, and a lot of their stuff doesn't necessarily deal less than 3 damage anyway.
Yeah, until Portal came around. Maelstrom Portal, something that's in the back of Rojom's mind, but he's saying that I don't really have the ability to play around it. I have Arcane Missiles and Blizzard. I really need to play optimistically here. And Tansoku can capitalize on that by just efficiently removing Lava Shock for 2 damage. Threatening by playing these 1/1s. Is that I mean, the Shaman summoning 1/1s is nothing to scoff at. That takes 2 mana away from his opponent by hero powering.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess this is where the Blizzard comes in, which is really funny. But, it depends on what happens with these Arcane Missiles and whatnot.
Someday I'll be just like
Blizzard might be a useless card in the future turns.
Yeah. So this deck that Tansoku is running is actually really interesting.
Man!
Well, it gets a good clear. Yeah, this deck is sort of like a classic aggressive Shaman. It still runs all of the tools that aggressive Shaman has always run. It's not really putting in anything new. It still has double Rockbiter weapon, even now at 2 mana cost. It's got the Argent Horse Riders. But it has like Ancestral Knowledge and Eternal Sentinel in place of maybe Tuskar Totemic, which would have been in there. It's not running any of the new cards. It's not running Spirit Calls. It's not running Maelstrom Portal. Its AoE is just strictly 2 Elemental Destructions. So this is sort of as aggressive as they come as far as aggressive Shaman decks go.
Yep.
Look at all that damage. It's just raw damage.
Yeah, I definitely see that. I think Rojom is also showcasing the power of Mana Worm. Tansoku taking every threat extremely seriously. He says, I have 16 damage in the hand from Doomhammer. I can unload myself, or unlock myself with the Eternal Sentinel next turn. So let's just play it slow. And now Rojom is drawing Polymorph, and somewhere in the building, Sottle is doing a fist bump because he kept asking, why is Polymorph in this deck if you're going to be extremely aggressive with things like Leroy Jenkins? I totally understand the role of Polymorph in terms of what it's trying to do. You anticipate your opponent playing big minions, and you're trying to seize back the tempo, you accelerate whatever you have on board. But it does beg the questions, like now it's one of those things where you're kind of punished for a deck building choice that seems a little odd.
And yeah, that's very true. I don't believe you though, because
You don't believe me?
that story involves Sottle fist pumping, which I don't think.
Well, whatever the British equivalent is of fist pumping.
I think it's a guffaw.
A sarcastic exhaling of oxygen through his nostrils. Yep.
Exactly. So glad
A
we
rather violent chortle, if you will.
glad we said that straight. And wow, that's a weak turn. Turn 8.
Oh,
He pinged the
goodness.
face, and he passed. That's brutal. And Tansoku does run Rockbiter still, so he has a potential to draw into extra burst damage in the coming turns.
Okay, so now he's protecting himself from Leroy Jenkins. That taunt minions also make it so that Flame Tongue and Argent Horse Riders can be really powerful in synergy with it, just building up the board pressure. Now, Flame Waker Blizzard is certainly an appetizing option here just because of the way the board has lined up for it. But Rojom has to start considering how he can win as well, because his opponent's starting to pressure him with significant damage. He's also been drawing cards. This is a little bit scary position for Rojom.
It really is, yeah. I think that Flamewaker Blizzard is sort of a necessary play, just to try and get a threat on the board that has to be removed. If Tansoku has to clear it off with the Doomhammer, then Rojom would be on the draws to win with like Fireball. So
yeah. He's not on draws to win as of right now. So if he chooses to play Flamewaker, try to remove with Polymorph and Frostbolt, he's just giving up his burn. So Blizzard seems to be the most logical course of action here. So good nodding, understanding that this is the spell that he wasn't sure of. Tunnel Trog a little weak here. Now, do you remove with the Argent Horse Rider Flame Tongue, or do you want to protect your interest of the Divine Shield and then use Lava Burst here? Or even, I would advise using the Doom Champ. I would advise against using the Doom Hammer charges, but it is on the table.
yeah, it's tough. I think you do want to save your health because you saw, a turn where Rojom had just passed, so you know that there's 2 situational cards in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
One of them you saw was Blizzard, but you have no idea what the second was, and he has 2 draws you have to account for.
Sure.
So how do you win this game most likely? I kind of like just Tunnel Trog and then Lava Burst down the Flame Waker, because you need to set up next turn a 3 damage Tunnel Trog. With Flame Tongue becomes 5, and then with Argent Horse Rider you get an extra 4, so that's 9. You can also attack face for 4 over the course of, or for 8 over the course of next turns, which becomes 17. So if you pick up 2 damage next turn, you win the game on the spot, and you still preserve your health.
Also because Trogs rule. Okay. Choosing to play the Argent Horse Rider for removal instead. It is mana efficient, and I guess Trogs don't rule.
But this way, you don't necessarily set up for any outs for lethal except for Rockbiter. In the other case, you would set up for almost every single out being lethal. Also, you let your damage be taken off the board relatively easily in this case, but this does provide like a very big threat to your opponent, and that does have a lot of merit.
Yeah, and how does Rojom choose to deal with it? He certainly will use his hero power. He can Frostbolt the Flame Tongue, or he can Frostbolt the face just to be extremely aggressive and keep his Water Elemental alive. That's actually a pretty underrated play, I think. That one was not exactly the most obvious one. I was thinking originally just, Frostbolt the Flame Tongue, keep it kind of healthy so that way your Water Elemental can keep freezing the following turns, but this way he's trying to use his Water Elemental to beat the hero.
Yeah, and also in this case, he sets up for a Fireball out for lethal or Leroy Jenkins out for lethal should there not be a taunt on him.
Yes. Now this was one of the unfortunate draws in terms of the good trade. Right now, Tansoku at best has 12 damage, so it's kind of out of the question to go for any kind of lethal play.
Yeah, he can put the Flamethrower Totem on the left side of the Argent Horse Rider to trade in to the Water Elemental, because that is like one of the biggest threats in the deck.
Yes.
Turns off his Doom Hammer, would turn off a second Doom Hammer draw if he were able to get these charges out. And he's going to keep blasting away.
Yeah.
2 damage at a time.
Rojom doesn't have a Flame Strike, and again, the Polymorph just sitting there, really making Rojom's life extremely complicated. And imagine if it was a lot of other options. If it was another Water Elemental, he could have played 2 of them, you know, or played perhaps Mirror Image to keep his Mana Worm alive a little bit earlier. These are the problems that Rojom's plagued with now.
Yeah, in Tempo Mage, you kind of want things that are almost always going to do stuff, because the inconsistency in the deck as it is. You want spells that are flexible a lot of times, and Polymorph is a great meta call sometimes. But that card against almost every single deck that Tansoku has is not going to find many great targets.
I mean, to be fair, it does work really well against the control type scenarios, like Sylvanas and Karin, obviously, or Ancients of War. And Rojom seemed to be targeting a lot of these control types of scenarios and lineups, because that's what he's expecting. Just when he happens to run into the other player that's also playing aggressive strategies, he's in a tough spot. He's also forced to hero power here instead of hero power aggressively. And these are like multiple turns where he hasn't been hero powering the face because he's been scared of dying, and for good reason. You just look at how much damage the Shaman is able to do. That's going to wrap up the game. Tansoku up 2-0, keeping Japan's hopes alive for another BlizzCon berth.
Yeah, I was able to take out Navi Oot early in the day, who was, sort of a crowd favorite of sorts. And
definitely a fan favorite.
Maybe all of those Navi fans have transferred their fandom to Tansoku.
It's usually not how it works. Usually if you beat your favorite player or team, you are considered a lot of insulting names that's usually tossed towards it, because people are a little bit upset. But if anything, it maybe gives credit to the players that were beaten. You never know if it's like, well, since you beat me, like CJ, if you beat me in a tournament, I hope you win because you beat me, right? So that way it makes me feel better. Like, at least I lost to the player that won the whole thing.
Yeah, the best player in the world.
Sure.
So to speak.
Now, Rojom goes to Warrior. Remember, we want to remind you guys that this is not your average Warrior. It is a Pirate Warrior. And Tansoku is playing Dragon Warrior. Another aggressive variant, but definitely not as aggressive as Pirate Warrior. What say you, TJ? Would you agree with me?
I would agree with you. What wins, dragons or pirates?
Sounds like a theme of the next expansion.
Sounds like
Pirates versus dragons. That sounds awesome, actually. Although I'm pretty sure dragons would win.
Yeah, if Brian Kibler were to make a graphic novel for children, it would be called Dragons versus Pirates.
Or you could literally watch the most recent season of Game of Thrones. No spoilers, but you'll know exactly what happens.
These dragons and pirates are a little bit more friendly and
Finley, you're not
cute.
a dragon. What are you doing with that machete? Put it down. No one needs to get hurt here, he says as he chops him down with an axe.
Yeah, Tansoku, though, is going to be in a rough spot. Pirate Warrior can take the board early. Even though they are aggressive themed deck, they have a lot of tempo tools early on, especially if they can tag team with some pirates.
Yeah.
And Dragon Warrior does bad when it loses the board and can get blown out, so it's going to be rough.
And also, this situation where it doesn't have early game plays, it does have a play now. Fiery War Axe is actually pretty crucial. This might look painful, which it is. You definitely have to suck it up and take the 5, but you're going to survive, at least for now. The big problem in the big picture is can Tansoku follow up to his core current league, because right now he has Booty Bay bodyguards without taunt. They're just 5/4s. So he needs to pick up dragons or things that look like dragons.
I don't know if things that look like dragons are going to help, Dan.
Well, Mana Worm's actually technically a dragon, TJ.
Just not on its card
Why
decks.
is Bookworm a dragon, but Mana Worm not? Can you answer me this?
Because it hasn't read any books.
He didn't graduate from dragon school.
Come on, Dan. Everybody knows that.
He doesn't like bringing it up.
Yeah.
He has a diplomacy in the spells and arts, but no piece of paper to prove it. Not that it would get him a job in this economy anyways. We have Rojom picking up also awkward cards himself. I guess he has the Frothing Berserker, which gets immediately challenged. How do you like just ignoring it all and going for it?
You start hitting him in the face?
I mean, you have Arcanite Reaper and Mortar Strike. That's Pyroblast in the face.
I've been playing Pyro Warrior over the course of the last couple of days, and I start counting my damage in my hand on turn 1. It's basically like, how fast can I hit 30 in a deck like this?
Yeah, I mean, it changes too because your opponent also played Sir Finley, so you can only gain 1 health at a time.
Only 1 health at a time is right. So let's see. He's got 2 extra damage from the Rusty Hook.
Yep.
12 from Arcanite Reaper. Moral Strike, he can assume that he'll have it activated, so that's 18. And Heroic Strike is 22.
22, you're right.
Yeah. So that's enough, Dan.
That's enough, assuming he's able to do it over the course of multiple turns.
I'm not a doctor, but
Shocking.
that's 22 damage. Is it shocking?
It is a little shocking because I know people who are doctors and play Hearthstone. I actually know people who are studying to be doctors and playing Hearthstone. And I don't think they always preface their ability to count by saying, I'm not a doctor, TJ. But, you know, Tansoku at this point, we're talking about the fact that he's playing very weak turn 5s. 5/4 minions.
Mm-hmm.
He's not even going to do that. I think he wants to keep his Korkan lead on board for pressure because he just doesn't want his opponent to gain any more momentum, and he wants to start putting the pressure right back.
Yeah, he's been shown that Rojom has a weak hand, so he's going to continue capitalizing on that by being efficient with his board, and Rojom's like, no!
Ooh, look at that upgrade. I mean, even without that upgrade, the Frothing Berserker dealing 2 damage to his opponent is also relevant because he has that damage over the course of turns anyways. So, assuming Tansoku goes super aggressive and puts his opponent down to 15, Rojom can hit his opponent on the backswing for 4 + 4 + 5. So that's 13 damage.
Dan. Unless Tansoku picks up a taunt, which I don't think he has in his deck, that he could draw next turn that would be activated, like Twilight Guardian.
He doesn't have Curator in his deck?
This one doesn't run Curator, no. He runs Malkorok.
You are
at
correct.
The 7 slot.
He is aware that One Night in Keratin is out, right? Curator is awesome in the Dragon Warrior list. It is very surprising to hear. Okay, Rojom sees 7 power on board. A little bit scared, but nothing to be too afraid of. You can just play...
Tink!
Just play the Heroic Strike. Thank you for the play-by-play on the sound commentary here, TJ.
No problem, Dan.
I love it. Can you do a Sir Finley impression?
No.
Can you do a Garish attacking the face impression?
Actually, the only impression that I can do is Upgrade.
Can you do a pirate impression? We are pirate themed, and it's not every day where we get to make pirate noises and not get weird looks from the crowd.
Nope, only Upgrade.
All right.
Tink! It's not even that good.
Perfect. You're hired. You know, they were looking for a guy to replace the Upgrade voice acting. The sound engineer team in Hearthstone really got hit hard by the Karazhan expansion.
Show him my resume of this cast.
Do you have a portfolio? Oh, sir, do you have a portfolio? Like, you're applying for what position now? Microphone feedback noise. I'm applying for the Upgrade voice actor position.
I just had to take.
What's your experience?
I just take a recorder out of my pocket and like press play, and it's just a recording of me saying "tink."
In different environments. This is me with a little bit more reverb. Wait, no, I have the perfect.
Here's me with auto
I
tune.
have the perfect equalizer settings for this. Oh man. Oh, Tansoku is dead. He's super dead. Oh man. That's the end of game 3.
Very dead.
Pirate Warrior prevails. Yar! Oh, man. We've been casting Hearthstone for quite some time, man. It's been many weeks. We've been having a lot of fun. It's refreshing to see Pirate Warrior in terms of just the diversity of strategies, in my opinion. And a really important win for Rojom because, you know, he was down 1-2, so if he didn't take this win, he'd be down 0-3 and, you know, just really tough position to win from there.
Yeah, it's tough to climb back. There's not really any of his decks that I think can be targeted. Maybe Dragon Warrior, but maybe not against this lineup. The fact that this match is even doesn't surprise me because of the way these guys' decks pan out. But we're going to see instant replay.
Yeah, just a recap of some of the moments that have been pretty impactful for, you know, either of the players. Now, this ended up going to Tansoku anyways, but you can just see that some of these cards have been really impactful to just how those matchups ended lining up. If you're able to play Doomguard on turn 5, you're going to seize the momentum away from your opponent, no matter how good of the class that they play.
Yeah, and Tansoku took game number 2 with the aggressive Shaman. So aggressive Shaman has performed actually really well across the day for the players that brought it. Actually, so is mid-range Shaman. A Shaman has performed well across the whole day. Actually, scratch that. Shaman has performed well.
You are correct,
period.
Man. Yeah, period. And that's the end of that thought. I think one of the things to consider, too, is, you know, how does Dragon Warrior line up against other aggressive strategies? Part of the reason why Dragon Warrior was so strong was because it set a certain tempo that other decks couldn't keep up with, especially if they were mid-range or control decks. It would just heavily punish based off of these overstated minions. You have 3/6 taunts, you have Blackwing Corruptors coming down, you have 9/9 for 6. But that's assuming you're able to get to that position. You saw how Pirate Warrior started much faster. And Rojom's playing some aggressive strategies. He's got Temple Mage, which of course is super strong with Mana Worm, Coin, Mirror Images, or things equivalent to that really set Warrior behind on board. And you also have Secret Hunter, which we all know is just a nightmare both to play against and to just think about every secret. And then you have, you know, the myriad of strategies, like you said, the Shaman you have to overcome as well. So this is going to be really tough for Tansoku, I think. But, I mean, Dragon Warrior is one of the best decks if it starts off with the cards it needs with Fiery War Axe early on. And even though Tansoku even had Fiery War Axe on turn 2, or sorry, turn 3, excuse me, to answer his opponent's threats, he was still in trouble.
Very good point. And moving into game number 4, this is an interesting matchup. It's going to be the Hunter from Rojom. And this one is very interesting. Basically, the whole deck is 3 mana or below except for Leroy Jenkins, which means that it's quite aggressively themed, and there's a whole bunch of secrets.
Whew. Yeah, that is a stark contrast between hands in terms of what you want early game between these two players. Rojom drawing his only card that it costs more than 3 mana. But one thing that's nice is that he has his Eaglehorn Bow, and that is one of the other key engines that really makes this game go for the Hunter, because you have so many secrets. Eaglehorn Bow can realistically blast for 15 to 21 damage if you get the right secrets.
Yeah. So he is going to try and guess what secret this is.
Yeah.
But he knows that no cards were kept, so it literally could be anything. Statistically, Cat Trick and Freezing Trap are the 2 ofs. He's got 1 of Snake Trap and Snipe?
Explosive Trap. No, that's a flare.
That's a flare.
We're looking at deck list right now. That is a flare.
It's in Korean. Yeah, Explosive Trap.
Yeah. Now, one thing that's actually worked out very well in the favor of Rojom, even though his hand is awkward and obviously not optimal in the least, Tansoku's also had a little bit awkward hand as well. If you look at the way his curve is lined up, he's had a very passive hand, and that's what Hunter wants. So yes, he does have these amazing tempo cards in Blackwing Corruptor, which, for all intents and purposes, feels just like fire elementals in your deck. Yeah, you know, Rojom Rojom's is going to be able to put out some damage here. And when you have that Leroy and kill command, all you're going to be looking at is ways to be aggressive against your opponent. And now he has 3 charges on the Eagle Horn Bow with upside of more if he picks up another secret.
Very true. He can start going aggressive pretty early, and he knows that Dragon Warrior doesn't have ways to block damage from his Twilight Guardian. They do have ways to absorb some with taunts, but I can imagine Rojom is just going to start pushing here. 9 damage from Eagle Horn Bow every turn. If he weaves in hero power, that's 5 damage every turn.
I think the concern is, you know, do I address this Blackwing Corruptor? My opponent's at 29, and he's technically ahead in damage on board. So if I start racing him and he's pushing damage, will I get blown out if he has a single Ravaging Ghoul just to mess me up? Now, Rojom does have Hunter's Mark, and that allows him to play Seer Keeper, Argent Horse Rider, Hunter's Mark, but he's also well aware of the fact that his opponent might have the Twilight Guardian, and that card could be extremely problematic if he spends his removal on the Blackwing Corruptor. So I personally think you just go aggressive. I don't think it's worth wasting, because if you get slammed on by that 3/6 taunt, you're going nowhere.
Yeah, you kind of got to take some risks, and putting him in at 19 already on turn 5 is pretty good. And Arcanite Reaper's not helping at all. It's an interesting tech card that Tansoku chose to put in his deck. It's really good in the mid game if you're expecting a lot of a certain type of deck. It's also really good at just pushing damage. 10 damage for 5 mana, even if it's over 2 turns, is, you know, pretty solid deal.
Rojom thinks that it's a Ravaging Ghoul, but he sees Arcanite Reaper. He's going to be a lot more relieved, because if it was Ravaging Ghoul, he'd lose all power on the board. Yeah. And this is also an interesting sign for Rojom, too, because he sees that his opponent's trading a lot. That means his hand has to be a little bit slower, and that gives Rojom a lot of confidence to be even more aggressive, I think.
He can just deal 14 damage this turn if he wants.
I think he should, considering that he has Leroy and his opponent has proven that he doesn't have taunts to get in the way of stuff, and he's using his weapons to kill 1/1s. I would love to see Rojom go for the second kill command here.
Yeah, he doesn't have a beast in his hand. He's not going to have a beast anytime soon, most likely, considering there's not actually many beasts in his deck. He's got, like, Unleash the Hounds, Kindly Grandmother, and Snakes. That's about it.
And that's game.
Wow. Well, we said it was going to be fast games. Maybe not a fast series, but fast games.
Yeah.
And you guys can rest assured that Froden and I are not liars.
That's right. At least not yet. Well, we have yet to hit some of these other games, which could end up becoming a little bit long and drawn out. But for now, Rojom's Hunter ends up, despite the awkward hand, working out. I kind of pointed this out in the very beginning. Just like, even though, yes, Hunter's hand was awkward, but so was Warrior's, too passive. And what Hunter always wants is decks that take time to get set up.
All right, game number 5.
No more questions for the witness, Your Honor.
my case rests.
Based on the evidence presented, I have to declare that Frodan is a grapefruit. Mage versus the Warrior. Now, keep in mind that the Warrior doesn't have the Fire War Axe this game, but it has the just as equally good, if not better, Alex Strauss's champion. Assuming it never gets dealt with, it just keeps dealing 3 damage, and we've seen Alex Strauss's champion single-handedly win games before by being unanswered. But Mage on the coin not only has the Mana Worm and Sorcerer's Apprentice, it also has that Polymorph, which just seems to be a lingering cloud over Rojom's head. But who knows? Maybe the Polymorph ends up being really good this game, because there definitely are targets that you want to hit against the Warrior with the deck. They always carry the Grom and Ragnaros combos, plus you never know if Draconoid Crusher or something equivalent to that.
Yeah, there definitely are targets, but the question is, can you afford to spend 4 mana to just be reactive to something against a deck that's just going to plop something down every turn? Doesn't really have spells.
Yeah, it's true.
Especially nowadays with a lot of players getting execute. Of course, Tansoku did not. He still has those executes in his deck. Does have the double Blood Acre, but other than that, he's just going to be slamming bad boys every turn.
Yep, Tansoku has the Alex Strauss champion, almost certainly going to play. There's just no way that you play the Fairy Dragon and lose your Dragon activators. Annoying because you know that you have to get through and chew past these mirror images. But Rojom doesn't have the easy answer. No Frostbolt, nothing, no Arcane Blast plus ping available to him. And so he chooses instead to trade. And that's so painful because you just know that you can get this damage in, potentially snowball to a victory. But given the context of his hand, it's better he has spells. Or better he has Sorcerer's Apprentice because he has spells.
Yeah. Wow. So Tansoku's going to go for a Ravage Eagle here. It seems like he's going to set up for a second Ravaging Ghoul if Rojom doesn't answer this Sorcerer's or this Ravaging Ghoul that's on the board, which is a pretty smart play, you know?
Yeah.
Instinct would have told you to, you know, slam down Alexstrasza's champion, get that free trade into the mirror image in order to play like Twilight Guardian next turn and have like the best possible board state to do so. But this play is a little bit alternative.
Yeah, I think it's really underrated. You have 2 Ravaging Ghouls, so in the event that it gets pretty bad, your opponent, you know, Frostbolts and pushes with another minion onto the board, the second Ravaging Ghoul can come out. If your opponent chooses to play passive, which he is, which also Tansoku can extrapolate, because Mana Worm shouldn't be trading into 3/3s. It should be constantly hitting your opponent, and then your opponent has to trade into it. So why would you trade your Mana Worm into an Alexstrasza champion? It has to be because your hand is either 1, really extremely slow, or 2, very spell heavy, knowing that your opponent can play this removal game. So it seems like a rather simple play, but there's a lot of layers to just playing Ravaging Ghoul as opposed to playing the second Alexstrasza champion, on top of mana efficiency and other things.
Well, Dan, Polymorph found a target.
Yeah, not necessarily a bad trade there because you don't really lose too much. In fact, your hand, again, is really slow, so Archmage Angenitis might be one of the things you're considering to think about for long-term planning. But this is one of the problems. You know, Polymorph didn't buy you any tempo onto the board. It went 1 for 1, and your opponent kept a minion, which is now buffing your Frothing Berserker by attacking into mirror images. So Rojom definitely feels the pinch here.
Yeah, he does have some decent tools to deal with the board at the moment. Blood Mage plus Arcane Blast cleanly deals with the Frothing Berserker, and he does have like Fireball and Arcane Missiles in his hand for removal. But there's not really going to be a lack of threats anytime soon for Tansoku. Pretty much, there's so many great draws in his deck now. This deck was designed to curve out and to capitalize on board leads throughout the game. Once you take the board, you force your opponent to be reactive. You just keep dropping threats over and over. And especially the kind that Tansoku has, because he has Malkorok and he has Arcanite Reaper. Those are 2 cards that get even better the further ahead you are.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And then, you know, with things like Draconoid Crusher and Malkorok, which just gives you so much extra punch in the late game. Not to mention, of course, Grom, which is a finisher. Really awkward spot for Rojom to be in. He's going to need these Arcane Missiles to land on 1 minion and kill it. Does not do that.
Wow.
Now it's starting to get really bad. Azure Drake just kind of icing on the cake here. Didn't really need too much, just a minion that he can play that's reasonably sized, and that is one of them. Black and Corruptor, of course, not able to be active, but doesn't really matter as much as long as you're kind of pushing this damage. He's got 6 this turn, put his opponent down to just 18 with 12 on the board. Grommash is not lethal next turn, but Tansoku can take his time. He's in a really good spot.
Yeah, Tansoku can keep flooding the board knowing that there's no AoE spells in this deck. No Arcane Explosion, no Flame Strike, no Blizzard. It does have a Kabbalist Tome, which can get those spells, but at the cost of 5 mana and usually an entire turn. So not usually what you want in this situation. Rojom can start removing this board. He can like Fireball down 1, Frostbolt down another, but then he's going to take at least 6 next turn. Tansoku's going to develop another threat. He's not going to have anything left. He'll cry.
Hopefully not on camera. I'm really bad at comforting people.
Yeah. And you know what they always say, crying is contagious.
I was always told that crying is for losers. But, I mean, you met my dad, so you know.
Ah, Frodad. What a friendly guy.
He has a lot of nuggets of wisdom, man.
Yeah.
Grom Hellscream, just you can get an easy trade on the Azure Drake and just go for 8 damage, putting your opponent essentially on his last turn. Your opponent also just Azure Draked in the face of 12 damage. So I think you're just feeling extremely confident. Flame Waker, Fireball, and Arcane Missiles is the first play that jumps out to my mind. I guess you can also squeeze in the Sorcerer's Apprentice there too.
Yeah.
So he's going to need these Arcane Missiles / Flame Waker pings to kill a couple of these minions.
Oh, those pretty good shots. Those are on minions. He's got a good chance to clear the board here. Doesn't do it, but gets close.
Oh, man. 2, 5, 8 damage with the swing of Fiery War Axe next turn. Do you go for the 2-turn lethal, TJ?
I think so. There's...
Is there a way to actually do it by killing a minion? You can 2-1 into the 3-2, Blackwing Corrupted to the face.
No, not quite. He's seen a mirror image, which is the only mirror image that Rojom has in the deck. He's seen a Frostbolt, so there's only one more in the deck that could punish it.
I like it.
So there's one card in the entire deck besides Cabal's Tome into Icebearer Ice Block that would punish this line of play. Or Babbling Book into something.
Babbling Books?
Ooh. Well, he can
try to bluff his opponent.
Oh,
but
yeah.
That's not going to really work there. A Concede comes out, and Tansoku with the aggressive play. TJ, I'd like to do me a favor. Please read the answers to the question that Tansoku said when asked about his favorite heroes in Hearthstone.
This was in an interview before his run through the summer preliminary. Qualified for that based off his points, of course. Why did you start playing Hearthstone? I loved Rexxar at first sight. What's your favorite class? Rexxar.
Favorite class is Rexxar.
Has both speed and power, so he's the strongest. What's your favorite card? Explosive Trap, because you can beat aggro with 2 copies of it. What are your thoughts and your expectations going into the tournament? I will hunt you down.
Role player confirmed. There you go. That's why.
Wait. Sorry, that wasn't Tansoku. That was Rob Wing.
The plot twist. Tansoku rips off the mask. Turns out it's Rob Wing the entire time. Have you ever seen Rob cast a Tansoku match? I haven't. Or did he cast the previous one?
I think he might have. Did I say earlier that me and Frodan weren't liars?
Yeah. I guess I broke the pact, TJ. I apologize. Let's go to game 6. It could be the series-defining game if Tansoku takes this with his Mage against his opponent's Mage. He is going to the finals against Chonsu, and the hopes of all the Japanese Hearthstone fans stay alive. Now, remember, Tansoku has his own twists on the Mage. You see some of it already there with the Fairy Dragon. He also has one Forgotten Torch in the deck and 1 Acolyte. Interesting halfway point. I know some people love the Forgotten Torch versions of the Tempo Mage because you stop playing for Tempo and you just start burning your opponent. You kind of transition to Freeze Mage.
Yeah.
But they really hate loading the deck with just a lot of draw because then you're not really playing for board. And if you're going to play like Burn Mage, you might as well just play Freeze Mage. Mm-hmm. So he just chooses the halfway point, which I haven't seen much of, and I'm still undecided on whether or not I like it or not.
Yeah, it's tough to say. And there's Forgotten Torch now, but Rojom getting another Blizzard from Babbling Book. That's the second Blizzard he's gotten today in this series from Babbling Book.
Has to draw Polymorph and the circle is complete.
Yeah.
That would almost make me feel like it's the beginning of the end for him because it's just like there's too much finality and resolution in how that ends up lining up. If he draws Polymorph in like the next 2 cards or so.
It's Hearthstone punishing him.
I do wish that was the case sometimes where
Hearthstone was a sentient being.
But at the same time, I totally recognize that we don't really control that outcome at all. Tansoku has a very explosive turn. Flame Waker, Arcane Missiles, Mirror Image. And the nice thing about it is that if your opponent responds to Flame Waker, it's going to take most of his mana, if not all of it. Fireball, Frostbolts.
Especially if they spend their whole turn doing it. You slam an Azure Drake and boom.
Yeah, then you get ahead of the Tempo, which might actually be one of the first times we've used that name of the deck pretty appropriately because Tempo Mage really isn't that tempo-oriented all the time. It does matter because that's the ideal game plan, but it often shifts and pivots. Sometimes it's just, Burst Mage. Sometimes it's Babbling Book Mage. You just kind of do whatever the Babbling Book kind of dictates your hand to do.
Yeah. When I'm talking to my wife about Hearthstone, who doesn't know that much about Hearthstone, she plays Tavern Brawl every week, but doesn't really do much outside.
I have a name,
Sorry, Ferdinand. I always use tempo in conversations incorrectly to make myself look smarter.
Yeah. You just say the word tempo randomly.
Watch him play this Azure Drake. He's going to put a minion on the board and draw a card. Look at that tempo.
Which is not what tempo is at all.
Look at next turn. He's going to Frostbolt the face and Fireball the face. He's going to deal 9 damage. Check out that tempo.
In all seriousness, people actually misuse the word tempo a lot. So let's just clarify for those who don't who are still new to Hearthstone concepts.
So basically, what tempo means is any play that you make in Hearthstone is for tempo.
TJ, thank you so much for joining this year's Hearthstone Championship Tour. Your services are no longer needed. I was slipped this note by Rob Wing himself, a.k.a. Tansoku. He was able to write a note on a piece of paper to slide it to us. Drawing for cards here, really important just to kind of continue to accelerate his path here. The Flame Waker's been really threatening, and one of the things that actually does happen in this matchup, by the way, is when you play for tempo, you actually get so far ahead that it's like Hunter versus Hunter, where one person is just stuck responding, and the other person gets to be on the turn to just potentially draw to kill your opponent. Like, he just draws his 2 damage. His opponent's at 17. Realistically, Tansoku can just start gearing towards killing his opponent and never have to worry about the board. His opponent can play Water Elementals and Polymorphs and Azure Drakes out the wazoo, but you're just going to kill your opponent unless he's able to get some kind of way to stall it through Babbling Books or, say he has, game-defining cards on the board like the Archmage Antonidas.
Yeah. Whoa. So this is quite a lot of stuff that can be played. So we can Flame Waker, Blood Mage, Thalnos, Mirror Image, Arcane Missiles, and fit in a ping here. Should be enough to clear the board or get very close to it. Might have to trade in a Sorcerer's Apprentice if he can't quite get the Azure Drake, but yeah, it is going to be tough then from Tansoku because he still has some damage left to go to piece together victory. He's got 12 in his hand, 13 with the ping. Can't fit that in next turn. But he needs a little bit more to fit it all in. Does the Azure Drake live?
He ended up playing Blizzard. Oh. So that way he can keep his Flame Waker burst next turn.
Well,
and I actually really like this play because Flame Waker's damage as a minion is not nearly as important as being able to get appropriate use of Blizzard. But look at this Fireball Frostbolt's draw.
That's, Rojom has to win.
Yeah.
I don't know. It may not be it because that's a lot of damage that Rojom has in his hand.
Okay, you're right. Flame Waker.
Tansoku's got to ping off the spell power.
Yeah, it's definitely. It takes down Rojom's power by 2. Mana Worm's not going to be that useful here. You need to attack. He's going to definitely load it up. He's got the appropriate mana uses for everything here.
It's 20 damage if he uses all those spells.
3.
And so it's going to be off.
Okay, so I guess that's it then. Rojom's going to play out the rest of his spells. I think Arcane Blast on the Azure Drake is more than warranted. But after he's done playing everything, every spell adds 2 damage. So that's 8 plus the 3 plus the 6. So that's 19. I think, yeah, you're right. So it's a little bit over 20, but not going to be enough. Tansoku is going to go to the finals, TJ, and represent Japan.
Well, so we're not going to have an all-Korean final. Still a chance for 3 Koreans to make it to BlizzCon, but all the Japanese fans out there are going to be rooting for Tansoku.
This is actually kind of amazing if Azure Drake survives the entire Flame Waker onslaught. Nah,
not quite.
It's not meant to be. Tansoku has that Roaring Torch, even has the Firelands Portal. I would love for him to use it. All right. Well, that is the series. Tansoku keeps Japan's hopes alive in a good old Japan versus Korea showdown for the last remaining spot for Asia Pacific in 2016.
Yeah, and it's kind of a cool story. Japan has had players have success at BlizzCon before, but other than that, they've been sort of quiet this year. And these two regions are widely considered right now two of the best in Asia Pacific as far as Hearthstone goes. So it's going to be cool to see them battle at least for one last spot at the World Championship for this region.
Certainly, certainly.
Yeah, and Tansoku has aggressive decks. He's going to be going up against, you know, maybe a little bit of an alternative lineup with Chunsu, who's got some greedy control decks. Even his Druid is a little bit greedy too.
Yeah, I want to see if one of these guys' aggressive lineups is the right call. Now, of course, both of them lining up means one aggressive player gets through, but the purpose of them bringing these aggressive lineup is to innovate the mold. A lot of people aren't expecting these aggressive hunters and aggressive shamans and even pirate warrior to go through. A little bit sad that Rojom's run has ended here, but at the same time, I think he made quite the showing in 2016. And once more, it's quite unfortunate that 7 out of 8 players here can't go. But at the same time, I hope he's able to use this as encouragement to take the next step the following year in 2017 and come back stronger.